Good evening, boys and girls. Welcome to Lesson 11.3, Quadrilaterals. Our essential question for tonight is how can you classify and compare quadrilaterals? Let's get started by turning in your Go Math book to Lesson 11.3. Now looking at our choices, this is what you have to choose from. You can choose quadrilateral, parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, square, or trapezoid. Now you can classify these in as many ways as possible, so there's not just one right answer. So let's start out with number 2, and let's go ahead and write down quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. And any polygon with 4 sides is a quadrilateral. So make sure you write that one down. Now let's look at what else we can write. I'm also going to call this a parallelogram because it has 2 sets of parallel sides. Notice how these 2 sides are parallel and these 2 sides are parallel, so it classifies as a parallelogram as well. Go ahead and write the word parallelogram down. Now we cannot write a rectangle because to be a rectangle it must have 2 sets of parallel lines that have 4 right angles. And as you can see right here, these 2 are acute and these 2 are obtuse. Now, is it a rhombus? A rhombus is a 4-sided polygon with 4 sides that are the same length, and it also has 2 sets of parallel sides. So yes, this one does work out to be a rhombus as well. Now we cannot classify this as a square because to be a square, you must have 4 right angles, and these are not right angles, even though all my sides are the same length. For a trapezoid, it must have only 1 set of parallel lines, and as you can see, we have 2 sets of parallel lines. So for this polygon for number 2, there are only 3 things that you need to have written down: quadrilateral, parallelogram, and rhombus. Okay, for number 3, I want you to write down what you think it is by listing as many things as possible that would classify this quadrilateral. Then I want you to press play when you feel like you are ready. Okay, for question number 3, you should have had 3 things listed. You should have said a quadrilateral, a parallelogram, and a rectangle. This would not be classified as a rhombus because it would have to have all sides the same length. It would not be a square because even though it has 4 right angles, all sides are not the same length. And it's not a trapezoid because a trapezoid must have 1 set of parallel lines. Alright, go ahead and press pause as you continue to work on number 4. Be very careful with this one. I will explain to you what each one is as we go over it, but go ahead and press pause now and see how you do. Okay, for question number 4, you should have only had 2 choices written down. You should have said that this was a quadrilateral because it does have 4 sides and 4 angles. It is a parallelogram because these 2 sides are parallel and these 2 sides are parallel. However, we cannot classify this as a rectangle because to be a rectangle, even though it has 2 sets of parallel sides, all angles must be right angles. It's not a rhombus because it does not have 4 sides of equal length, so it's also not a square. It cannot be a trapezoid because there are more than 1 set of parallel lines. So there are only 2 choices for this one. Okay, go ahead and press pause as you work on number 5. Okay, friends, for this one you should have said 2 things. It's a quadrilateral, but it's also a trapezoid. It's a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides and 4 angles. It's not a parallelogram because it would have to have 2 sets of parallel lines. This one only has 1 set of parallel lines. It's not a rectangle because it doesn't have 4 right angles. It's not a rhombus because it doesn't have 4 sides of equal length, and so it's also not a square, but it is a trapezoid because it does have 1 set of parallel lines. Okay, boys and girls, try number 6 on your own by pressing pause, and then we'll check it together. Okay, boys and girls, for this one you should have only had 2 items written down. You should have wrote down quadrilateral and trapezoid. The reason why it's a quadrilateral is because it does have 4 sides. It's not a parallelogram because it has to have 2 sets of parallel lines to be a parallelogram. It can't be a rectangle because it must have 4 right angles. It cannot be a rhombus because all sides are not the same length, and it's definitely not a square. And it is a trapezoid because it does still have 1 set of parallel lines. Alright, boys and girls, for number 7, let's read the word problem. It says, Kevin claims he can draw a trapezoid with 3 right angles. Is this possible? Explain. Go ahead and draw what he's talking about and see if that would be a trapezoid. Alright, for this one you should have said no. And the reason why we would have to say no for this one is because if you're going to draw a trapezoid with 3 right angles, and you start off with the first right angle, and then you continue on with another right angle, I'm going to go ahead and just do the top one. And I'll just go ahead and make those symbols there to show 2 right angles so far. If you were going to make a third right angle, well, I'm going to try to make this as straight as possible. It would have to connect somewhere because it would have to be a quadrilateral. So like I said earlier, trapezoids must have one set of parallel lines. So to be a trapezoid, if it has one set of parallel lines, you can have 2 right angles, but you would also have an acute and an obtuse angle. And then of course there's always the traditional looking trapezoid, where you will have an obtuse, acute, and acute angle. And there are no right angles on this one. Alright, let's take a look at question number 8. It says, if a figure is a square, then it is a regular quadrilateral. Is this true or false? Explain. What do you think? Well, this goes back to our first lesson on this chapter for 11, where we talked about regular polygons and not regular polygons. So we learned that to be a regular polygon, you have to have all angles that are the exact same, and all of your sides must be the same length. So in this case, a square would be a regular polygon, also known as a regular quadrilateral. Alright, so here are your homework questions for tonight. I want you to be very careful, read questions 1 and 2 and answer A, B, C, or D. Also do questions 3 through 6 for review. And of course, don't forget to rate yourself as novice, apprentice, practitioner, or expert on how you feel about classifying quadrilaterals. And please don't forget to bring your book with you tomorrow so we can check them together, and then we'll do more practice as well. Have a great night!